It's possible because when you go to the social media, even on the media, everyone is talking about the possibility of a consensual candidate. So people are looking forward to having a consensual candidate. Even at this point, I don't think people have given up yet. Did you really believe going in there that there is something that could bring these people together to actually choose one candidate?
Yes, that was the concept. And some of those, even like Professor Maurice Kamto, that was unjustly eliminated, including Zipang and myself, we had this concept that we believe strongly that that particular action, that conclave was going to come out with something from where we were going to build this one of the greatest political momentum in Cameroon.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome to the Beyond Africa podcast with me, your host, Ngalim Bernard. As we have already announced, we are focusing on Cameroon because this year, October 12th, Cameroon is organizing presidential elections, which are important because the president is 92 years old. He's been in power for 43 years and he's running to succeed himself. Recently, the elections management body, ELECAM, and the Constitutional Council validated 12 candidatures out of 83, with one significant candidature rejected by these bodies. That is the candidacy of Professor Maurice Kamto, who was second in the last elections, and now he is not running in this contest that is highly important, sensitive, and crucial in the life of the nation. Despite that rejection, the opposition leaders are putting themselves together to identify one person who could be the consensus candidate. So today we are receiving Prince Michael Nguese Ekoso, who is one of the contestants. His candidature was rejected, but he did not lay down his guard. He continued working with the others to identify the person who is going to be the torch bearer. He's going to give us an update of what they have decided, if at all they have come out with a consensus candidate, and who that candidate is going to be, the criteria they used, and why they chose those criteria to identify who is going to lead the coalition. And if they believe that this person can win the elections, also if they think that the elections management body and the Constitutional Council are going to pronounce the results from the ballot box as they are, if another person but President Paul Biya wins the elections. You are welcome to the Beyond Africa podcast, Prince Michael Nguese Ekoso.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bernard. I am grateful to be here with you today. I know that we have been going back and forth to get ourselves into this program, but I am grateful that we are on today.
I'm equally very grateful that you've made it here. It's past midnight in Cameroon and you've been busy the whole day, running from one meeting to the other, which is what you've done over the last week or 1.5 weeks, because you are working with the coalition that is trying to identify a candidate that should be the flag bearer for the opposition parties. Any success with that?
Well, Ben, let me make some correction with regards to what you just said. As a matter of fact, this, let me say, coalition, I don't like to call it coalition because it is a transgression of a platform that has been existing for more than 3 years now, which you already know. About 7 political parties came together to discuss on the issues of the electoral code, which we worked on for 2 years. And we wanted to provide information to the public with regards to the work we had done. And the government obstructed us. We could not do the official and public presentation of that work. But however, we sent the work to the powers that be and to some diplomatic relations. So it is an evolution of that platform that led to what we call now a consensual candidate for the opposition. So this work had begun many, many years ago, not only some few months ago. But yes, maybe about for the past 1.5 months, we have been running helter-skelter. I myself have been moving from one meeting to the other. And so we believe that Cameroonians have had a very strong call for the need to get a consensual candidate. We have worked for the past few months, or especially intensively for the past few weeks, meetings in Fumban, meetings in Yaoundé, and so on and so forth. But I think that this night is already past midnight now, it's almost 1 a.m. According to the electoral law, all the declared candidates from ELECAM and from the Constitutional Council were supposed to make sure that they validate the colors of their ballot papers by 5 p.m. Some said that it was supposed to be by midnight today. But the meeting I left from this evening before coming to join you in this program, one of the candidates spoke with a member official of ELECAM before I left that meeting. And they asked him to come and make the final verifications tomorrow in the morning. So in short, people still, I think candidates still have between now until tomorrow morning to make sure that they go and adjust to whatever information and clarification that is needed by ELECAM.
Yeah, thank you, Prince. Before we go into some of the details you've just mentioned, if it looks like no one is sure of the procedure and the timelines, does ELECAM not have clear timelines or during which specific aspects of the elections are supposed to be executed?
Yeah, you know, in recent days, let me say in recent months or so, we have had a situation in Cameroon where it will appear that the laws are not respected. So the powers that be or members of government have decided to take the laws into their hands because it is alleged that, I don't know what it is, Article Section 128 of the Electoral Code that specifies that candidates for presidential election are supposed to come or their ballot papers. They were supposed to do that at least 15 days to the day of election. So it took a lot of us aback and by surprise that ELECAM came up with this information and this communique and asking people to come, candidates to come and deposit their colors of their, make verification of the colors of their ballot papers and many other different information that we needed. So it was strange, and we felt that it was some kind of pressure that the regime is trying to put on the candidates, because some of us felt that we are on the issue of the consensual candidates. They are trying to put pressure so that procedure will not be able to be realized, and that is what we are realizing, because there are a number of things that are supposed to be around this period like this. If at all, members of this consensual candidates project are supposed to be part of the project. They are supposed to remove their candidacy from ELECAM, and they were supposed to get the reimbursement of the 30 million. So now, if you don't do that between yesterday and maybe today morning, you forfeit the 30 million. And I'm not too sure that some people want to do that. So that has pushed a lot of candidates who were actually coming to see that we can discuss these issues about the consensual candidates to rush to ELECAM and to carry out with the necessary procedures. So it's a very hard thing for us to understand why the precipitations and why the government is trying to be able to do things beyond or against the law.
Yeah, I'm looking at the electoral code and I'm not seeing any specific provision on the timeline between the confirmation of the candidates and the printing of the electoral material, which is of course necessary for the logistics. You know, it's supposed to have some reasonable time in between it, but I'm not seeing any specific provision regarding that. Which then takes me to the next question, which is, looks like there is no set down law or principles governing the elections. ELECAM appears to be doing things on the go as things happen. Is that the impression that you guys of the opposition are having?
Well, like you already mentioned, you know, for example, my candidacy, one of the reasons why my candidacy was rejected was that I did not provide a certification to justify that I'm duly registered in the electoral code. And if you look at section 122 and section 123 subsequently of the electoral code, it gives the different documents that a candidate is supposed to provide. There is nothing there that suggests that we are supposed to provide a certificate of justification of your registration into the electoral code. So those are some of the things that we have been trying to condemn with not only ELECAM, with different spontaneous reactions from different members of government who just come up with certain declarations and certain statements. So the electoral laws, we have had a series of meetings with ELECAM from past 2 years. And ELECAM has actually, including the president of the board of ELECAM board, including the director general of ELECAM, they have all accepted that there are a lot of flaws within the electoral laws in Cameroon. And that is why we see all of these lapses, and we see people coming up and taking certain decisions which are not actually really within the context of the electoral law, often come up and certain provisions or really be verified in the electoral law.
That is one thing I wanted us to look at. Most commentators, lawyers, and political scientists have it that the rejection of Professor Maurice Kamto's candidature was not actually grounded in the law, was due to some political machinations. I don't know your opinion about it, but my question is, if nobody believes that the electoral system is managed in a way that one can foresee the outcome of current actions, or one can actually base their predictions on the text of the law, how convinced are you that the electoral body, ELECAM, and the Constitutional Council would respect the outcome of the ballot box if the CBM candidate doesn't win?
Well, that is a very fundamental question. And these are the things that we have been looking at back and forth with regards to this particular election, this presidential election of 2025. As a matter of fact, the momentum around this election provided the grounds for Cameroonians to believe that 2025 is that year, deliver themselves from the yoke of the current system. But when we look at things closely, and especially as the days and the hours are dwindling down towards October 12th, especially with the fact that many of these candidates have rushed already to ELECAM since from yesterday morning to provide all the necessary information for their logistics or materials, it leaves us with the impression that the candidates themselves are in disarray. They are confused and they don't actually have a mastery of the situation right now and how to be able to go about it. So, with regards to the issues of Professor Maurice Kamto, it is clear that he has been one of the actors, political actors in Cameroon that actually drive a certain narrative that provides a lot of euphoria and at the same time a lot of fear on the part of the regime. Euphoria on Cameroonians who want to see change, and fear on the part of the regime who are afraid for change to occur. So that is why they came up with a lot of machinations. They came up with different aspects and different things to be able to make sure that Professor Maurice Kamto is actually discarded from this presidential race. However, like I said, I believe that even at this point in time, Professor Maurice Kamto still stands a very strategic position to be able to influence the outcome of this presidential election. My only worry now is that I have been a very strong member in trying to provide the platform for these consensual candidates. And I'm really trying to be able to convince myself not to believe that the fight that I have put all my energy into for the past few, let me say a month ago, intensively, I'm afraid to say that it has gone to into the deep waters. I don't want to conclude yet, but that seems to be what I'm reading. But if we succeed somehow, because one of the bone of contention was the fact that some people are scared to be able to lose their 30 million.
Of course, people should want to guarantee their money.
So one of the things that I suggested in some of those meetings is this: Cameroonians are ready for change. Cameroonians really want change. Cameroonians are passionate for change, and they are ready to be able to make the maximum sacrifices. You know as well as I know that especially Cameroonians in the diaspora, they will be ready to be able to put in their best to make sure that we get a consensual candidate and that the election, which means that if we finally get a consensual candidate, or if we had gotten a consensual candidate before today, Cameroonians would have contributed money, to make sure that some of those people who are afraid that they are losing their money or that they have lost their money could be compensated or could be reimbursed from the money that we are going to derive from public contribution, because that was one of the agenda as we're discussing on how to go about this consensual candidate stuff and how to raise funds. We're going to make sure that we raise funds from the public. And in my opinion, and from my reading, and with the passion that Cameroonians have to find ways to get this regime go out, we could raise more than, maybe say, more than even 10 billion. It could be possible. And from there, we can reimburse all the other people.
Yeah, talking about the money being raised, being a hurdle, a challenge that some candidates do not want to lose, what are the other criteria? What are the criteria that you put on to weigh the different candidates to arrive at a choice? Or was it just an open conversation for people to drop in, drop out, and kind of make different proposals along the line?
Yeah, I think you give me the opportunity now to open up to some of the things that I didn't want to say, but it is important for the public to take note of that. There are some points the candidates who were interested in getting this consensual candidature. At some point, some senior people within the negotiation table suggested that we should allow the candidates who have been confirmed, to do the talking all by themselves. So on Sunday, we allow them to do the talking. And I think that is where things started becoming sour. Because it will appear that maybe some people within that setup did not really understand the intensity or the intensity or the need for them to come out from that room with a consensual candidate. Or maybe some of them were there to create that atmosphere in order to bring the confusion which we find ourselves into right now.
So are you saying that some of them went in there without the intention of actually dropping their candidature in favor of another person?
It will appear, because at the end of the day, because I was there from Fumban to Yaoundé, from Yaoundé first day, second day, and the third day. So the third day, I was not allowed to be a part of, because I'm not a candidate. So only the candidates, were four of them, only the four of them got into that final room there and stayed there for hours. And they came out to tell us what they told us, which was a very great shock to myself and to a number of every other person that was in that building.
When I spoke with you over the last 2 days, you were very hopeful that we're going to get a candidate. Then when I spoke to you, the end of today, Cameroon time, towards midnight, you said the chances are less than 0.5%, indicating that you had given up all hopes. Are you very disappointed and not seeing any light in the horizon that someone or some other people may still make any concessions in the days ahead?
Well, yesterday, when I say yesterday, it's already 1 a.m. Cameroon time. Yesterday, it is alleged that Mr. Bello Buba Maigari had a visit to Barrister Akeremuna. I'm not too sure about the intention and the outcome of that visit, but the pictures are on social media about that visit. So I just want to believe that visit had some very strategic conversation, which will be able to provide certain grounds for people, even after confirming their materials for the election, they could still back out. I just hope so. But looking at the platform that actually had this project, we are still continuing in that direction. But in my view, the chances, because the coordinator of that platform, the Madame Tomaino Patricia Ndamdoya, sent a representative to ELECAM today to confirm, her materials for the elections. So I felt, however, we had come to a conclusion that if some of us, like myself, there's Zipan and a number of other candidates who dropped their application, even if our applications for the documents were validated by ELECAM and by the Constitutional Council, at some point in time, we're going to withdraw to be able to support the idea of that consensual candidate, which in our view would have been the only female who has actually taken time to coordinate us for the past 4 years now. Remember, I told you about the platform.
Yeah, I would want us to talk about the candidates at a later point. But for now, I just want us to clear the criteria that you identified as the elimination points for every candidate. Because we know there are some members of the platform who have members of parliament, some don't have members of parliament. As you said at the beginning, it's a platform that was based on the modification of the electoral code. You made proposals. but the government did not let you do the proposal as public, but you sent an official copy to the President of the Republic that apparently has not had any effect in the life of the nation. Then the platform transformed into a platform for a consensual candidate and maintained mostly by those who had been retained to contest at the elections. Now, what are the criteria you set? Was it membership? Was it national representation in a parliament, representation in municipal councils? Or what were you looking at as elimination? Why should somebody feel more relevant in the choices than another candidate sitting in there?
Well, from the beginning, we told ourselves that we're going to do two principal things. Number one, we're going to set up what they call in French secretariat technique, a technical secretariat that will be able to pick up all the various manifestos of the various candidates and the founding members of that platform, which is different political parties, and bring those manifestos or those political visions together to harmonize it and to be able to make sure that we get a consensual manifesto which the candidate could be able to defend. That was one. The second point was to look at the criteria, the conditions, the qualifications. Well, some other people suggested that if we based our mind strictly on the conditions why somebody will become the consensual candidate, then we will make somebody to feel too important that if he or she becomes that consensual candidate is based on what he or she has or knows. So some people eliminated that aspect. And for me, it was good, and at the same time, it was bad. And that was the kind of situation that they took from that moment that they were left all by themselves, and they went into that final conclave room to come up with what we got now. And after I spoke with a number of them later on, I came to understand that many of them didn't even, first of all, understand why they were left by themselves to go into that room. That was my conclusion this Sunday. Because some of the comments I heard later on didn't really actually resemble as people who went into that room to come out with a consensual candidate. It appeared they went there and they started quarreling among themselves, not like quarreling per se, but they were arguing about some of the things that we would have actually developed, which were the conditions, the principles. But now they went there and they were arguing among themselves about who is more qualified and who is not more qualified. Many different things, many opinions started coming in, and people started going too personal with each other, which was actually not necessary. It was actually not necessary. So what I believe is that condition would have been set up by us, by the larger group, and like what we had earlier mentioned, the choosing of or the choice of the consensual candidate was supposed to be an inclusive responsibility, not an exclusive responsibility. Driving it closer to only those four candidates made it very strenuous for them, because I could understand the weight of the responsibility. All four of them were looking themselves as potential presidents of the country, because they knew that anybody who comes out of that room as the consensual candidate automatically becomes a person that Cameroonians everywhere in the world, because from the Fumban to Yaoundé, I have the impression that Cameroon, or that concept, or that our meeting was being zoomed by the whole world.
It's possible because when you go to social media, even on the media, everyone is talking about the possibility of a consensual candidate. So people are looking forward to having a consensual candidate. Even at this point, I don't think people have given up yet. Anyway, people don't yet know that things might have not gone the way they want. But I wanted to hear from you. Did you really believe going in there that there is something that could bring these people together to actually choose one candidate?
Yes, that was the concept. And some of those, even like Professor Maurice Kamto, that was unjustly eliminated, with including Zipang and myself, we had this concept that we believe strongly that particular action, that conclave, was going to come out with something from where we were going to build this, one of the greatest political momentum in Cameroon. We believe strongly in that. I believe strongly in that. Madame Damjoya believes strongly in that. Zipa believes strongly in that. Many of them believe in that. But the disappointment I'm having is that I'm not accusing anybody, but 3 of those candidates seem to come into something that they did not understand the background strategy or the background intensity of that initiative.
Yeah, what I hear is that for the last 4 or 5 years that you've been working on this, beginning with the electoral code to the consensual candidate platform, you seem not to have developed, when I say you, not you individually, I'm talking about a platform, you did not develop the basis on which you people are supposed to work, because some people seem not to understand what you were looking for.
No, that is not the case, because I mentioned a while ago about inclusivity of that platform. We didn't want to limit it only with the 7 of us. And at the same time, we didn't want to limit it also when the pressure for us to get that consensual candidate came up, especially when ELECAM announced that we had just a few days to provide information with regards to the logistics of the perspective of each candidate. So that announcement played somehow to bring a lot of pressure, and certain things were taken or certain decisions were taken hastily. And because of that, the idea or the strategy to be able to bring other people on board for us to be able to make sure that that decision becomes inclusive was not there anymore. So those are some of the things that I want people to know and I want you to understand. And so from that perspective, it is clear that the pressure made us to take certain decisions that were hasty. And at this point in time, there is very little we can do. And that's why I mentioned from the beginning about the meeting between Minister Bello Buba and Barrister Akaremona.
Before we go into the individuals, what I hear from you is ELECAM. I think we have spoken about this, but I just want to hear from you from the perspective of general opinion. General opinion also has it that ELECAM and the Constitutional Council may not have clearly laid out rules, and people may be looking at that candidate that can actually try to force ELECAM and the Constitutional Council to apply the law as it is. And if they don't apply the law as it is, they may look for other means of pressurizing ELECAM and the Constitutional Council to comply with the law, or at least be fair in executing what the law has not provided for. Is that one of the criteria that you people were looking at?
Yeah, like I said, the initiative from the beginning of a consensual candidate was an initiative that has been built from a conviction that 2025 must be that year that we should be able to have change in Cameroon and to make sure that the civilian regime goes on retirement. That was the background momentum. And if you listen to some of my conversation or some of my speeches in some conference or some congress or political parties, you will hear me always emphasizing that the opposition we're going to take the presidency in 2025, because that momentum was built from that moment. I think about 4 to 5 years ago. So it is from that perspective that we were very sure that whether it is Prince Ekoso who becomes consensual candidate, or it is Madame Tomanon Damjoya, or it is whoever from that platform, we were going to drive this momentum right to the end. So, but it's rather unfortunate that certain things happen hastily, like I said earlier, and other people came in, and the people who were supposed to actually mastermind and put that energy to get that consensual candidate who understood the need of the time could not really happen.
Thank you very much, Prince Ekoso. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us now, you are watching the Beyond Africa podcast with me, your host, Ngalim Bernard, and my guest, Prince Michael Ekoso. And we are discussing Cameroon's elections. Kindly like, subscribe, and share. Don't forget to comment in the comments section, because it is your comments that give us what we need to know about the conversation and what you think about the future. Also, propose guests you'd like to see on the platform. We like to bring people whom you think should be talking to you. It's an open platform. We're not restricted on who should come here. So propose guests and even propose yourself if you want to talk and you have something to share. So Prince, thank you so much for talking to us about the coalition platform and where you have been, the struggles you have had, and your hopes being dashed and not entirely being dashed. You're still very hopeful. I like that. But yesterday, Celestin Bedzigi was on a TV program where he said the SDF has said they are not interested in a coalition. Today, an SDF representative was on another TV platform and confirmed that they are not interested in a coalition, arguing that this is a CPDM tactic to distract the opposition from focusing on what they need to focus on. What is your reading of that position?
Well, I'm not surprised about the statements from the SDF. And I think that the SDF is not the only opposition political party having this same position. I remember I was invited by Honorable Cabral in his Congress some months back, and he also has the same position. So we understand that there are some political parties that are not answerable to the people. In my view, I may be wrong, but that is the view I have. Because the Cameroonian people have studied the political scene of Cameroon for too long, and they feel that it is contingent on the opposition political parties to come together and to provide a consensual candidate. But if an opposition party feels that coming together is not necessary, and that individual candidates and political parties can run for election and remove the incumbent, well, let's wait and see. So basically, I cannot be a spokesperson for these people or these political parties that have this kind of stance. But in my view, I think it is unfortunate.
Yeah, because Cabral Libby issued a statement today in which he says that he could not join the platform because he was not there at the beginning. But my understanding is he was part of the platform when they were proposing the electoral code. Did his party withdraw from the platform at some point?
No, as a matter of fact, to the best of my knowledge, right up to, I think about maybe 2 months ago, where ELECAM and the platform had a meeting at Jacob Palace without any publicity, Cabral Libby was there. I think you followed that event. So you cannot say 2 months ago you were part of a meeting and you didn't know what was transpiring. The idea about the consensual candidate was a discussion which myself and Honorable Kwemo Pierre brought it up some years ago during some of those our meetings. And I remember some of us said that, well, it was too early because we were concentrating on the electoral code. So let it low. But the idea became very, very strong again, especially after we understood that the concept of trying to push the government to give us a leeway or to meet even with the president, because in January we sent another copy because when went to the presidency to give New Year wishes, she encountered the incumbent president and told him about that document, and the president said that he had not seen the document. So she committed herself to send another copy, which was sent to him in January. So no response till now from the president about that document that was sent to him again. And people cannot say that they were not aware that we had moved from that electoral code context to now focusing on elections.
So
when
Cabral Libby says that this is a very well thought out strategy to fragilize his candidature and the Cameroonian opposition that is engaged in the presidential elections of 2025, do you see that this platform you've been working on and strongly believe in actually has members who trust each other, or they doubt and suspect each other?
Well, if you are reading from the statement of Cabral Libby, that statement is almost the same thing of the statement of the SDF. And I want to believe that maybe there's some level of collaboration between the SDF and the PCRN, because they are coming up almost at the same time to be saying one and the same thing, talking about trying to destabilize opposition. You cannot be talking about the government trying to destabilize opposition whereby on that same platform, we use that same platform to work on the electoral code for many years, and that same platform that you have been sent invitation document for the Fumban meeting, letters for invitation were sent to all of potential candidates for this election, including members who are founding members of that platform. So when people come up today and they are trying to make justifications it leaves us with very, very doubtful impression about what they really want to make out of this election, you know.
So for those of us who were following your conclave in Yaoundé, one of the things we're thinking about was what pushes people to go in there and what keeps people out of it. So this is an official communique from Cabral Libi, but from private conversations, what do you hear from PCRN militants and what do you hear from other opposition candidates regarding the PCRN leadership and the question of trust?
Well, until last night that I was in some other meetings and people were talking from different angles, some people believe that some opposition parties have had some mandates, you know, to weaken the strength which is contingent on the aspirations of Cameroonians to see change in 2025. I don't know how far that is true, but that is the impression. And that are the things that people are saying in the corridors of the streets of Yaoundé from time to time. So if, for example, a political party leader who is supposed to be one of the people who are supposed to be spearheading coming together, because we know that it is said in English that together we stand, divided we fall. If you say you are an opposition party, and opposition parties have been working on the light of trying to be able to come up with a consensual candidate, you know, so what will push you to be able to make a statement and say that you are not part of it, which is on that same platform where the electoral code, which you participated massively, you know, for us to be able to come up with that document. So what will make you to feel that the same coordinator who has been coordinating the electoral code project, and we have moved now to consensual candidates, sent you an invitation, and then you say that it is a plot by the regime to be able to destabilize opposition? Don't get it. It looks very, very childish, you know. I don't know how to put it, but I'm sorry to use those words.
It's commonplace in Cameroonian politics that everyone accuses the other of being a spy for the government. So I'm just wondering the kind of ambience that you politicians have when you meet and you're discussing critical issues. I was discussing with a Cabral Libi supporter today who was making me understand that Kamto might have been a spy paid by the government to infiltrate the opposition. Because those are ploys and that's language that is used to destabilize everyone in the opposition. I don't know how you protect this because now you have Issa Chiruma Bakare as one of you. He's been a member of government for a very long time and he swore fidelity to Paul Biya, and now he's part of you. So does that give some credit to Cabral Libi and to Joshua also to say that the CPDM is infiltrating you guys?
No, Dr. Ben, listen. I don't believe in those kinds of positions. Why? Because these people who are coming to join this platform now, they are coming as new members. If there is anybody who is supposed to be there and to actually mastermind the coordination of this idea for a consensual candidate, should be people like Joshua and Cabral. They cannot now, because the agenda of a consensual candidate is seemingly failing, now come up with certain declarations or statements saying that the government is sending people to infiltrate. Well, you can never know people's intention. I myself have talked with Minister Issa Chiruma, you know, in his house to be able to find out what are his basic intentions and what are the things that pushed him to be able to resign and what are the things that pushed him now to be able to come back to the opposition. He explained to me, and I think I understand with him now.
I am sure my viewers would like to hear from you what Mr. Chiruma said.
You know, I cannot go to certain details, you know, but what I'm saying is that I listened to him, he spoke his mind, and I feel that it is contingent on us who, let me say, the founders of that concept of a consensual electoral, a consensual candidate. It is contingent on us to come together and say, let us try to see these things or these new members, let us try to observe them closely. Than to stay behind, you are invited for a program, you don't attend the program, and you stay behind and you start drawing conclusions. It doesn't sound properly like someone who is serious to be able to lead the country. But one of the things I know, which Mr. Chiruma said, is that he has been stomaching a lot of frustrations for all these years with the regime. And one of the things is that for the time that he has been minister, he has met with the incumbent president, I think just once or twice. So those are some of the things that actually could be very frustrating, that you are working with a boss, that you scarcely meet with him, and he's expecting you to be able to provide input with what is going on around the establishments.
It will be interesting to hear from Minister Chiruma himself, so we can discuss some of those issues and get where he stands on them. Now, if you were talking at the consensual platform about an individual candidate that you would support or that you would let go, were you, as an individual, were you going to vote for Madame Patricia Ndamjoya or for Barrister Karemuna or for Isa Chiruma Bakari or for, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name, the candidate for Mr. Bezigi's party?
Well, I think that some of these things should be made very, very clear. You know, I had taken my time to be able to study the political landscape in Cameroon. And, you know, I remember you and myself, we have been talking about certain characteristics and certain criteria for who should be eligible to run for the office of president. And I remember we had this conversation with you, and you systematically evacuate or castigated the aspect of age and an Anglophone. So those criteria are not actually the criteria that somebody should hold on to as a very fundamental criteria for why he or she is running for the office of president in Cameroon. So I had systematically and gradually come to this conclusion that age cannot be the problem, and to be an Anglophone cannot be the problem. The Anglophone crisis is not a venue whereby we feel that because you are an Anglophone, you can have the mastery to solve the Anglophone problem automatically. It is not to be an Anglophone president is not a panacea that you're going to solve the Anglophone problem. That is what I see, and that's what I finally understood. And now, one of the things I have been able to explain to some of these candidates, even during when they were still in that conclave, just the four of them, I was pleading with some of them, sending them text messages and trying to make them to understand the criticality of the time. And I made them to understand that the fact that we have Ateki and Barrister Keremuna, and then we had Matomba and Madame Ndamjoya, who were the four candidates that remain in that closest conclave. I was personally hoping that these three men were going to look at the fact that they have just one woman amongst them who has fundamental experience in politics in this country. Not only her, even her husband. The records are clear. They could endorse this woman just as a passing path for us to be able to have some kind of uniqueness in this presidential election in Cameroon, and which, in my view, was going to actually boost, certain curiosity around the political atmosphere in Cameroon. That for the first time in history and in the context of Africa, and particularly Cameroon, we are having a female candidate who could become a president of the country. That is how I was thinking that these three men were going to reason. But it's rather unfortunate that they went into this conclave with a lot of very personal things which didn't really translate into the main objective of this conclave.
I think you've now made the viewers want to know what I think or whom I think should be the candidate because of my conversations with you. But if I argue that a fundamental criteria should not be the language you speak or where you are from or your age, I also argue that your sex or your gender should not be a fundamental criteria. But you just spoke about Madame Ndamjoya, and I think you added an element to her qualifications, which is experience. Are you taking the gender criteria to be more important than the experience she has accumulated as a politician in parliament, in council, and in other spheres of life?
No, for me, the issue, like I mentioned, I went overboard the aspect of gender. I went overboard to talk about her experience and the different things that I have seen over the maybe 4 to 5 years that I've been very, very close to her. I have seen a woman, even within, there are certain things I must be able to say, even within that platform of consensual electoral code, I have seen a woman who has been able to coordinate men. And during tensions, during frustrations, I have seen her drive us to a place of calm, to a place of reasoning, to a place of conflict resolutions. I must tell you and tell Cameroonians or the world that is listening to us today that there were times on that platform that we had a lot of tension amongst us, a lot of it. I mean, very serious tensions. I have seen her as the only woman bring all these men to reason and to bring them to a place where they can be calm and to reason on the things that matter. So it is not only about the issue of gender, but I've seen her work. I've seen her do things. I've seen her coordinate. I've seen her drive people to action. So those are the things that I know about her. I know about Barrister Akeremuna. I was one of his campaign directors and spokesperson for the 2018 presidential election. I have seen somewhat about Matumba. Ateki is a personal friend whom I was very surprised on that day I came to that Congress. That was when I discovered that Ateki was the presidential candidate. I known him to be civil society expert, but not into politics. There were times that I was trying to encourage him to be able to become very active into politics, but he was always very, very careful. So that day on that Congress, it was a very great shock to me, and I told him about it. That if there were people who he was supposed to talk to about getting involved into politics, I was supposed to be the one of the people that he was supposed to actually explain his ambition to, maybe 1 or 2 months before, or maybe 3 months, or it depends. So given the fact that I know him to be somebody from the civil society, and he has nothing very, very peculiar in terms of politicking in Cameroon, I would not obviously endorse Ateki. It's not only about being young. You remember I mentioned the fact that being young is not a major criteria, So, and then another aspect that I learned that became one of the burning discussion during the four of them was the issue of the Anglophone issue. Ateki was holding on the fact that his brother was a military personnel, was killed and was beheaded, and so the Anglophone issue, there's a lot of marginalization and so on and so forth. But that is not the issue. That is not the central point of that conclave. The conclave was not there to bring people to come out with emotions. The conclave was there to actually look at the context of Cameroon at this point in time. What are the things that we can do together to make sure that this regime is put on their knees? That was the bone of contention.
So at this point, do you still have any hopes that this regime can have fierce competition at the ballot box on October the 12th?
I will not be able to be very confident to say yes, because you have 11 candidates of the opposition. Each person is going to his or her own direction, and you have one incumbent. As I speak to you, from that meeting I had with some people yesterday, people are already expressing doubts. And again, also, people are becoming very, very pessimistic. And the aspect of even going to cast their votes is already coming into play. So people say that they may not even participate in the exercise to vote.
And what do you tell them?
So voters apathy is already developing already.
So what do you tell people who don't want to go vote any longer?
What do you tell them? They ask us to go and produce a candidate. We have not been able to produce a candidate. What do you expect me to tell them? That no, we should just believe, we should just go and vote, we should just go and vote helter-skelter? No. The only thing I can tell Cameroonians right now is that let us continue to believe that some people among these candidates can be willingly ready to forfeit their 30 million, because that's also part of sacrifice in nation building.
That is a tough one.
To come back again and say, okay, we can still talk about the consensual candidates. That is where my hope is right now. If it is not going to be possible, it means it's not going to be possible. And it's unfortunate.
Thank you very much for coming to the Beyond Africa podcast, Prince Nguese Michael Ekoso. I hope you have good rest tonight. get up tomorrow and continue your movement towards having one candidate that is going to represent the aspirations of the Cameroonian people that you so much want to defend and guarantee a prosperous life for.
Thank you very much, Doctor. It's a pleasure, and I'm very, very happy that we have had this conversation finally, in spite of the great challenges of network and so on. But rest assured that I will continue to do my work. I have been very passionate about the outcome of this election, very passionate about the prosperity and the stability of our country. And I hope that in the subsequent weeks or days, we can still come around again to enlighten Cameroonians on the issues that are very, very important with regards to this election or regard to the life of our country.
Thank you so much. I hope to bring you on again so that we discuss on the evolution of the campaigns, evolution of everything towards the elections, and edify the population on the stakes and what important decisions they will need to make at their personal levels and at community levels. Because as you say, and as I say, and as most people say, these elections are very critical for the life of Cameroon and, of course, the life of Africa if we need to transform Africa, because we need to have leaders who consider the transformation of Africa and the well-being of Africans as the fundamental principle of having power in Africa, not just having power for the sake of having power. Thank you so much for coming to the Beyond Africa podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. And kindly like, subscribe, and leave a comment so we know how we're doing and we know what you expect to see from us next time. Bye-bye and see you next time.